Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's event, Developing Yourself as a Project Professional. Firstly, it's great to see so many of you have joined us today. I can see people have joined us from the US, across Scotland, and across Europe as well. So thank you for getting involved there. My name's Robert Allen. I'm APM Branches Manager, and I work with the wonderful volunteers in the APM Scotland Branch who have kindly given up their time today to run today's webinar. You'll find in the handout section of your control panel some additional information around some of the information we're about to share today, but I'm pleased that Greg, James and Neil will be your main presenters for today. So we can get an understanding of who's in the room a little bit further, I wonder if you could just complete this opening 2 questions for us, just so we know who we're talking with today. So what is your project management experience? Is it high? 0? You're here for the first time, you're looking to learn more? Medium? Low? So it looks like we've got a fair few experienced people with us today, which is great. I'll let that run a little bit longer. I can see that we've got almost 150 people with us today, and about 40 odd people have completed the interaction element so far. So I'll leave that to run for a couple more seconds. Perfect. So just moving on to the next question. What is your project management development aim? Are you looking to get some of these qualifications or even the APM Chartered Project Professional? Again, this really just helps Greg, James and Neil to help design today's session. So it looks like we've got a fair few people looking to become chartered, which is great. And half of people looking to find out more about our qualifications. As I said, the handout section, there's a document solely around qualifications, so please download that and take that away with you. Now, we're really looking forward to you getting involved in today's session, so if you have any questions, please post those in your control panel, and I will read those out at the end of today's session. Any questions that we can't answer, I will try and get you additional information to help you. So, enough from me. I'm going to pass over to James, who's going to take this forward. So James, over to you.
Thank you so much, Rob, and thank you everyone for joining us today. So I'm going to talk a little bit about APM qualifications and kind of sort of what qualifications are available for you, and kind of as well our chartered standards. So first things first, I'd like to have a bit of a chat about sort of why you should sort of look and consider APM qualifications. There's a lot of project management qualifications out there, and like many of them, APM are nationally and internationally recognized qualifications that really kind of set your CV apart from kind of a lot of other people going for project management roles. But in addition to that, APM qualifications, rather than teaching you a particular model or particular one way of doing kind of or delivering projects, APM qualifications give you a myriad of skills, tools, techniques, best practices, ideal processes that kind of on how to deliver projects in kind of efficient, ethical, and kind of reflecting the best kind of practices of the sector. So the kind of they give you the tools to kind of ideally select what's the best way of delivering the projects that are within your sector that you're working on, rather than presenting you with one particular model on delivering projects. So that kind of gives you an idea of sort of APM sort of qualifications and why you should go for them. And as well, they're designed to kind of all support each other and go for that career path all the way to chartership, and that's one of the things I'd like to sort of cover today. So kind of at the initial, the first stage qualification that APM has is the Project Fundamentals qualification, and that is a qualification designed for anyone who's completely brand new to the sector, has very minimal or zero knowledge of projects and how to deliver them. And as well, it's also really good for people who are, say, in not project professionals, but kind of are involved in projects. So that's, say, people from marketing or IT or kind of any of those sort of essential people that you have within your projects who don't necessarily sort of understand the project terminology or aspects like that. So that's kind of what this qualification is designed for. Anyone who's just starting out on their career, or anyone who wants to get a good fundamental understanding of kind of projects and project management. So what this qualification assesses, it's a knowledge-based qualification, and it assesses people's knowledge of project management. Now, what do I mean by when it says it's assessing someone's knowledge? I'm hoping that I can use an analogy that sort of travels through and sort of hits base with a lot of people. If you're, say, cooking a recipe and it says, you know, you need X amount of ingredient that is cooked on this temperature for this amount of time. So what you do is you follow the recipes, the instructions. And then if you had an assessment that basically tested you on that recipe and it said how long do you cook this ingredient for, how much of this ingredient do you put in, and then you are sort of regurgitating that information, that's knowledge assessment, and that's what the project fundamentals assesses. Sort of going back to the food analogy, you're not sort of breaking down. If someone said to you, you know, well, why do you have that much of the ingredient, or, you know, why is it cooked at that temperature? That's not the level that's being sort of assessed. It's that level above it, that little bit higher level. And that's what the project fundamentals test. It's kind of, you know, it goes into the sort of core concepts of what is a risk register, what is an iterative life cycle, a linear life cycle, or agile and waterfall as terminologies people may sort of be more comfortable with. And it's kind of those questions, that initial kind of seed, that basic foundation that starts people off on kind of getting to grips with project management and sort of understanding those elements. The qualification has been sort of aligned by the Scottish Credit and Qualifications Framework, the SCQF, and that's been aligned as a level 6 qualification, which if you're from an England and Wales sort of background and are familiar with the RQF, which is the leveling that England and Wales use, that's more of a level 3 qualification. And putting it into a little bit more plainer English, that's the equivalent of sort of like an AS level or A level kind of type qualification. So it doesn't necessarily have the breadth of that type of qualification, but it's got that level of rigor. So you've got an understanding as to kind of what you're going to be assessed upon and to what sort of rigor or intensity. And then the next qualification up from that is the project management qualification. So this is absolutely for those people who have already got a project management qualification, be that the PFQ or something like the Prince 2 practitioner or the Agile practitioner qualification, or perhaps you're already a practicing project manager early in your career and you want to stand out from the crowd, from a lot of people, and sort of put yourself as a cut above the rest, so to speak. That's what sort of the target audience and this qualification is designed for. And what this qualification does is it really assesses understanding of project management tools, techniques, methodologies, delivery, and all the elements around that. So you really have a good grounding basis to really sort of engage with your projects and your project teams and all the other necessary elements that you need to sort of get involved with. Now, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, this is an understanding-based qualification. So what does that mean? And again, I'm going to hopefully got another little bit of analogy that helps kind of people sort of get to sort of grasp with the concept. So going back to food, so this is going to be a little bit of a story, but myself and my partner were watching a cooking program, and my partner noticed someone who was creating tomato soup. Basically, chuck a load of tomatoes in, chop them up, and do really sort of nothing else with them and start to kind of boil them to turn them into tomato soup. And immediately my partner says, "You've done that wrong. What you need to do is you need to sort of roast those tomatoes with olive oil and balsamic vinegar, because tomatoes on their own don't contain a lot of flavor. They're incredibly watery. You need to draw that flavor out of them, and the roasting process is what's designed to do that. What my partner demonstrated there was understanding of the process in order to create flavor for that tomato soup. She wasn't just sitting there and reading a recipe and going, okay, I now need to, roast the tomatoes with X, Y, and Z for X amount of time. She knew why she was doing it and the benefit that it provided to the end meal. And so with that kind of base knowledge, she knows that if something changes or goes wrong, she knows what she's going to be missing from that meal, and she can then take steps to rectify that. And this is what the PMQ, the project management qualification, is assessing. So it's all around looking at those elements I talked about earlier. Why are project life cycles divided into phases? What's the benefit of that? Why is it done in that way? Why do we have a risk register, and what sort of key components does it have, and what's the issue if it doesn't have those key components? And it's all building upon that sort of level of understanding, so that if there is it gives candidates the ability to problem solve. So if those elements are missing, you immediately know what's going to be not there within the project and how it's going to potentially stumble and fall over. And so you can then plan ahead and immediately fill those gaps. And that's kind of what the project management qualification is designed to assess. It's your understanding of all the components and aspects. So again, as I mentioned, puts you a cut above the rest when it comes to knowing how to deliver projects. And this is what this qualification is assessing. It's also one of the advantages of the project management qualification. You can take it, there's a number of opportunities as you can take it. So you can take basically the standard qualification, or if you are already a holder of the Prince 2 practitioner, there is a Prince 2 practitioner PMQ, which recognizes your prior learning. And you take a reduced course and reduced assessment because you've already ticked off those elements of the project management qualification, because you've obviously gone through and done risk. And as you can imagine, there's elements across project management and the variety of qualifications that that are repeated or use the same. So there's a recognition of prior learning. And then obviously, as I mentioned before, the PMQ is a bit of a cut above the rest. It then pushes you on those understanding elements within the Prince 2 kind of assessment. You can also take the PMQ. It's a part of both a level 4 and level 6 apprenticeships. So again, if that's kind of a route that interests you, as well as becoming a project manager, you can take that route as well. So there's a lot of opportunity with the project management qualification. A little bit more information. Again, the Scottish Credit and Qualifications Framework, the SCQF, has levelled it at the PMQ qualification at level 7. So again, those of you more familiar with RQF, that's the equivalent of being a level 4, which again, to put it in more sort of simpler terms, that's the equivalent of an NVQ or a higher level apprenticeship. So that bit above sort of AS level and A levels, but not necessarily hitting that sort of degree level. So again, it's not necessarily the breadth of those type of qualifications, but it's at that level of rigor, focusing on a candidate's understanding of project management and those elements. And then we've got our third APM qualification, which is the Project Professional qualification. Now, what this qualification does, it assesses your skills and capability. It replicates, or the assessment rather, replicates the environment that candidates can expect to see when going into a business and being asked to deliver projects. And it sort of pushes and challenges candidates on elements that they possibly haven't done before. For example, a big element of what the project professional qualification, the PPQ, assesses is candidates' soft skills and elements like negotiation that sort of candidates may not have had an opportunity to do within their working environment, but it can kind of test them on that, and then it can be a sort of badge of pride that sort of, I have achieved this qualification and done it. So again, it's that sort of next level above your kind of knowledge and understanding of the area of project management. It's now demonstrating that you have the skills and capability to deliver projects, to lead teams, to basically run to kind of cost, quality and time components. It basically really assesses all those elements, as well as those really important soft skills. And it does that through kind of like a case study that the candidate kind of learns and gets to grips with, and then put into a series of scenarios that you have to sort of reenact sort of situations and how you would deal with that. And so again, really assessing those skills and capabilities of a candidate. And with the project professional qualification, again, it's also been credited and levelled like our other two qualifications, and this has been levelled by the SCQF, the Scottish and Qualifications Framework, at level 9. And so that's the equivalent of sort of like a degree level qualification, level 6 for RQF, for people who are familiar with that. But yeah, that's the equivalent of sort of like degree, graduate diploma, graduate level certificate, those kind of levels of qualification. So again, not necessarily the breadth of that kind of qualification, but the rigor assessing someone's skills and capabilities in that area. Now, big gun times, the Chartered Project Professional Standard, or CHPP. So this is absolutely for those people who have been delivering projects for a considerable amount of time. You've got the experience, and you have high levels of delivering qualifications, of doing it in an ethical manner, and have basically, want to have a basically recognition that you are not just excellent at your job, but you are one of the best in the country, and that's what the Chartered Project Professional CHPP assesses. So, what kind of things is it looking for? Well, if you're an active, so you've got to be an active basically within sort of delivering projects, programs or portfolios. So again, an active project professional with a proven track record, in again sort of with a strong element of the technical knowledge elements for CHPP, for the Chartered Project Professional. And you can get a lot more of our information on this from our website, and I'll go into a little bit detail on that. And again, there's a heavy emphasis on ethics and best practices with regards to sort of within the Chartered Project Professional, and all of those elements are sort of tied together within the assessment for the Chartered Project Professional. So again, kind of what do you need to do with regards to sort of preparing for and applying for sort of the CHPP? Well, there's a number of routes. So there's 3, and I'll start from the back and work my way forward. So route 3 is an entirely experienced route, where a candidate basically through an application and then through a portfolio of evidence, and then combined with a 2-hour interview where questions will be constructed from that candidate's portfolio of evidence, where the candidate will be able to demonstrate their kind of technical knowledge, their practical practice and best practice, as well as ethical delivery of projects, and kind of and those are all assessed against the APM Chartered competencies, which you can find available on our website. And again, so that will give you a breakdown of what we are looking for within a Chartered Project Professional, and through the portfolio of evidence provided by the candidate and what is expected of those Chartered competencies, both best practice, technical knowledge and ethics. Those questions are basically created from those two elements, that portfolio of evidence that you have provided, and as well the Chartered competencies. So that's kind of how that the interview lasts for 2 hours. and then that basically sort of determines whether you become a chartered project professional, as well as a review of your portfolio evidence to ensure through that you have met the requirements of the chartered competencies. So that's route 3. Route 2 is if you've done a qualification or a standard or something similar that recognizes the practical practices and technical knowledge of basically laid out within the chartered competencies. There are many institutes and universities that have basically set up Route 2 programs, which you can do some research into and find out more about. But it's basically for those who have those types of sort of qualifications and standards that basically for them to take that route. That's what Route 2 is basically what draws candidates down that route. For this one, what's assessed? Again, it's an application and a portfolio of evidence, but the interview is 30 minutes long, and it is focusing on kind of the ethical elements laid out within the chartered competencies. So that's Route 2. With Route 1, it's again for qualifications and standards that have covered off a candidate's technical knowledge aspects of the chartered competencies. And for note, the project professional qualification that I mentioned earlier in this presentation, that is a recognised Route 1 qualification. So for those of you who already have the project professional qualification, you can come through Route 1 for chartered and have your technical knowledge aspect already covered off. So you don't need to kind of prepare for, in preparation for your interview, all the aspects that cover the technical knowledge. It's going to be focusing on your practical practices and the ethical side of delivering projects. And so it gives you a much smaller focus in preparation for your CHP interview. So as I just mentioned, like Route 2 and Route 3, there is an interview for CHPP, and it's an hour long, and again focusing on the best practices and ethical side of that are laid out within the chartered competencies available on APM's website. And as well, it's an application initially and a portfolio of evidence, and the questions around practices and ethics are basically pulled from that and aligned to the chartered competencies, and combining that portfolio of evidence and the chartered competencies is how the questions are set up for your interview, like with the Route 2 and the Route 3. So similarities across the 3 routes for chartership, different routes depending on the type of career or developmental route that you have taken in order to go for the Chartered Practice Professional, CHPP. As well as on the APM website, if you're someone who's possibly not sure as to sort of where you are with kind of your own development in regards to the chartered competencies, we have recently launched the new chartered competencies on our website, which come with a lot of available tools and techniques, a sort of CPD log where you can kind of put in what your sort of experiences are and what training you're going to be doing and undertaking, and it maps out what areas of the chartered competencies you're covering off and also what areas you're lacking in. So it gives you a real kind of clear indication of, if you're someone who's planning on going for CHPP, where you can build up, or areas you need to build up in your sort of experience, your your working environment, what you do, and kind of all those elements you need to build on in order to best prepare yourself for the CHPP, the Chartered Project Professional standard, if that's something that you're aiming for. So there's lots of really useful tools and sort of options on the APM website that really kind of can help you prepare for chartership. Now, as well as offering qualifications and standards, APM is also basically a membership. It's an association of project managers, and you can become a member of APM. Now, if you have the project management qualification, the PMQ, and 3 or more years of project management experience, and sort of delivering kind of projects and things like that, it entitles you to become a full member of APM. And as well, if you hold the project professional qualification, that as well entitles you to becoming a full member. And what does kind of membership allow you? Well, you get discounts for sort of APM events and conferences and materials, and as well as other APM qualifications you want to go for. It also gives you an opportunity to engage with a really sort of informed network. There is an APM hub, which is like a focused form of LinkedIn, but solely sort of for APM members, and an opportunity to kind of build a network through that, and an opportunity to kind of learn and develop from each other from that. As well, you get access to a publication called the Project Journal, and so again, so you can kind of, you know, keep up to date with sort of all the information that's happening within the project sector, and all that kind of stuff's available for anyone who wants to sort of become an APM member. And through kind of the PMQ and the PPQ qualifications, those opportunities are kind of opened up a bit more for people. So that's kind of the career path and the chartered project professional standard, and how the qualifications lead into that element. To go on to a little bit more about some of the other qualifications that APM produces. So there are kind of 3 other areas. If you're the kind of person who has done excellent work in the leadership aspects of delivering projects and programs and portfolios and other sort of areas of project management, and really want recognition for your excellent kind of leadership techniques, tools, capabilities, skills, and abilities in that area, then the Major Project Leadership Specialist Certificate might be something for you. It's a recognition, a certification that sort of highlights that you are a cut above the rest within the focused subject area of leading projects, and the really the heavy element of leadership in that area. So if that's something that interests you and something that you want, then that's kind of like and maybe something you're interested in. We also have the APM Project Management Single Subject Certificate for Risk Management, and that again is, as it says in the title, very focused on a single element of project management. So that's around risk, and there's 2 levels within this. There's the risk level 1 and risk level 2. Aptly named. And so what the level 1 certification is designed around is for someone who really wants to kind of get to the basics, the foundations of risk. There being sort of, and risk and the risk management processes and all the elements there, and you want to kind of get a good basis before you push yourself further into kind of risk management. And then that's what the sort of risk level 2 certification focuses around. It's your understanding and your capabilities in kind of risk management, and that's what it's assessed again. And it's kind of, if you want to develop those aspects of your sort of project management skills and capabilities, then that is maybe a certification that might be something you're interested in. And we also have the IPMA qualifications, the International Project Management Association qualifications. Now, aptly named, these qualifications are designed if you're looking for something that's more recognized on an international market, that's what these are sort of primarily focused on, but also within kind of the realms of the subject of project management. And there's 4 levels to the IPMA. going from D to A, with D being the sort of lower level qualification for those who are sort of in the early stages of their career, just starting out as a project professional. You've done some sort of learning and practices, and you really want to kind of build your sort of knowledge and understanding in that area, all the way up to the level A, who is the IPMA level A qualification, really for experienced kind of project managers, who want to really kind of have a really sort of strong sort of qualification to put to their name for delivering projects that are sort of tied to international areas, and that's kind of what the IPMA qualifications look for. To break down into some detail, again, apologise on the sort of fonts, but this is sort of a little bit more detail on those qualifications I talked about. So as you can see from the major projects, leadership specialist certification, it's assessed via sort of a written application along with references and interviews to demonstrate your kind of leadership capabilities. And then you can see kind of in the middle 4, you've got the varying degrees of IPMA from the level D, C, B to A, and as you can see, they're assessed in a wide variety of ways, with down to the level D, where you've got multiple choice and written assessments, as well as an application, and then all the way to the top through kind of presenting your curriculum vitae, along with reports you need to develop, references, interviews, portfolios of evidence, and all those kind of elements in order to demonstrate your sort of capability. And as you can see at the bottom, you've got the risk level 1 and risk level 2. Again, for the level 2, it's a 3-hour assessment, and the level 1 is a multiple choice assessment too. And then we also have similar information on the APM Big 3 qualifications, and I've talked a lot about this information that I did before. Some elements I didn't touch on was the type of assessment. So for the knowledge level, the project fundamentals qualification, that is 60 questions, multiple choice, that is taken over an hour, and that's kind of how your knowledge of project management is assessed within that kind of area. And then above that, you've got the PMQ, the project management qualification, and how your understanding of project management is assessed is you've got a 3-hour written assessment, and that is gives you the opportunity to really kind of express, your understanding of these sectors. Why do we do this? The purpose of what we do, its importance, the repercussions of what happens, and really gives you the opportunity to show that you have an excellent kind of grasp of project management elements, and know that these elements will give you the ability to deliver excellent sort of projects and problem solve and be intuitive and proactive and anticipate, and all these kind of wonderful things that help people deliver projects. And then you've got the project professional qualification, which is, as I mentioned before, it's a case study that you'll get in advance of taking the assessment. And then it's broken down into a scenario assessment, an oral exam, and a report that you complete over the course of 1 day, which is taken over 2.5 hours. And those elements you sort of create within that time period, as well as going through the scenario and the oral exam. And all of those are tied into the case study, the preceding case study that you've done. And it's all around you demonstrating your skills and capability around delivering projects, those soft skills, negotiating, problem solving, decision making, and all the other elements of sort of project management, and really being able to critically analyze what is best for this project within the case study, within the situation that I've been presented within the assessment. And that's kind of those elements of the qualifications. And then we've got the big gun that a lot of you are here for, is the Chartered Project Professional Standard. And again, it's for those who want to basically be identified as some of the best in the country at delivering projects. And you've got your 3 routes that assess sort of ethics, professional practice, and technical knowledge, and depending on the route that you've taken, so if you've gone route 3, you will be assessed all 3 as it ties to your the portfolio of evidence and the application that you've put forward. And then in route 1, your technical knowledge is covered off by a qualification or standard that you've taken already. PPQ is one of those. And you will be assessed on your professional practice and ethical elements. And then route 2, you are assessed on the ethical elements, as your professional practice and technical knowledge have already been covered off. So that's everything from myself today. I hope I've been useful and informative, and I will look to pass over to one of my colleagues for the next part of this presentation. Thank you so much for arriving and having me talk at you for a bit, and I hope I've been able to help and be informative for some of you. And I will pass over to the next person within the presentation. Thank you.
This looks like it may be me, so happy days. Thank you very much, James. Good afternoon, my name is Greg Philp. I'm a Chartered Project Professional. I'm a Fellow of the Association for Project Management, and I'm also a member of the Chartered Management Institute, but don't hold that against me. I'm a Senior Project and Programme Manager at Leidos UK, and I'm responsible for one of our key programmes in national security and defence. Delighted to be here to speak today on professional development. I am not a PM by accident. I made a conscious decision around 10 years ago when I was in my early 20s with no industry experience, no relevant professional or academic qualifications. You'll be pleased to know that I'm not going to give you a blow-by-blow account of my journey so far. It was good to get an overview from James on the kind of early life qualifications, PFQ, PMQ. Demographic from the survey tool suggests that we've got many who are a little bit further down the road, so I'm going to speak to my experience through PPQ and CHPP in a moment. Project Me was my favourite APM drive of recent years, because I think it's really important to manage your own development. You are the only person who is truly invested in your own growth. And one of the most important conversations that I have had in my career was around mapping your own development aspirations. Prior to that conversation, I would say I probably did the same as everybody else. I'd have a rolling, maybe ad hoc 3, 6, 12 months in advance view of the world, thinking about professional development only when prompted to do so by the usual triggers. You know, we're coming up to our annual review. Okay, so what am I going to do next year that's going to be different? Or I'm looking at a future role. How am I going, where are we going to go? You may be aware that the APM competence framework has recently been refreshed. So anybody now can undertake the competence assessment on the APM website using the online tooling, which is really good. They have updated the framework itself, so there are a couple of additional competencies in there. Don't panic, CHPP assessment will not be changing in the immediate future. Members of the APM can now also review or save and review these assessments over time, so it's well worth exploring, and I would recommend having a look at that. My mentor at the time, a chap by the name of Alex Yates, reframed my attitude to development. Alex, if you're watching, thanks again. I'm sure you won't mind my sharing this. But effectively, in the same way as we do on large projects or programs, having a defined strategy is really important in guiding the decisions that we make. We don't, or we shouldn't, live to work. We should work to live. And so he pulled together this, well, he didn't, I know that we reused it, but this table at the side that you see. And effectively, you want to focus first on what's furthest away, but where do you want to be in your home life when you retire? What age do you want to be? What do you want to be doing? And that for me might look like I want to have my mortgage paid off and go on 2 or 3 holidays a year with my wife and family. So what level of organisation do I need to be operating at to be able to do that? And what kind of size of pension do I want to be drawing down, etc., etc. So to get there, where do I want to be in 5 or 10 years' time? Again, focus on the home life first, because that's what's most important, and that's what we often lose focus on when we get really into the professional development space. And to get to that long-term position, where will I need to be professionally at that point in time? What do I need to achieve to get you there? And I think one of the things that we often overlook is 10 years' time is really only, in our profession, 3 moves, because your big programs are generally 3 to 5 years. So two or three moves, it covers a 10-year plan. So what do we need to do to secure the first big step? And that's the stuff that goes in the top. Now, I found that this really focused my thinking, because when you frame your development in that way, and you're almost introducing your own milestones and effectively a delivery schedule, it's very easy to measure progress against that plan. Clearly a project professional, because you can't get away from the milestone plan. You can see my own timeline at the bottom of the screen, and for the sake of time, I'm going to skip straight to kind of 18, 19, my experience as we built towards PPQ, which for me formed Route 1 entry to Chartered Project Professional. I had the opportunity to support the APM in the pilot for version 2 of the PPQ, and that replaced the earlier 4 written knowledge exams with the hybrid assessment approach and the focus on the soft skills that James spoke to. You can completely self-study for the PPQ. It is a degree level qualification. I think the reading list's about 27 books, and it's assessed by means of a case study and oral examination and written examination. And I'm sure that Neil will speak a little to the support that's available through training providers in preparation for PPQ shortly. My approach, the guidance that you get for the PPQ clearly lists all of the different competence elements and knowledge elements that are expected and will be assessed for each of the different areas. And I created a little matrix where I listed each one of those, how many times each one of those was going to be assessed, and I used that to form a study guide for myself. But I know that there will be established materials that providers can share with you to support you on that preparation. But to put the PPQ in context, if you imagine that you were going to step into an in-flight program and the project or program manager had just disappeared off the face of the earth, but you actually had all of the documentation that you need and all of the relevant email communications and a breakdown of all the key stakeholders and who they are and what their stance is and particular issues and their backstories and all the company history, and you had 6 weeks to familiarise yourself with that position before you go and you have your first conversation with the project sponsor or the company director. That's essentially the first part of the assessment. You're presented with a scenario, you're given 15 minutes to prepare, and then you have a discussion with the sponsor, and you basically explain to them how you're going to approach the resolution to the scenario that you've just been presented with. And you will be able to work out, because it's relatively obvious, what those scenarios are likely to be, and there will be 2 or 3 different scenarios within each assessment. But it's not, so it's role play. It's not fiction, it's not made up. They are effectively assessing you and the approach that you will take to solve that problem that's in front of you. So don't make it up. The second part is the knowledge assessment, and it's about 50 minutes long from memory. Don't quote me on that. Covering the key competence areas, and it's then rounded up with a written report. I think you get an hour for the written report. So overall, it's about 2.5 hours. The timelines, you'll need to refer to the actual guidance, but that's roughly my recollection of it. That written report is the kind of thing that you would expect to prepare for any senior stakeholder. So it's kind of our bread and butter. For those of you who are not sure whether or not you want to go for PPQ or if you want to go straight to Chartered, PPQ, the Project Professional Qualification, essentially satisfies all of the knowledge element of the Chartership assessment. So that's why it's Route 1. But Route 1 interview, the scope of that is solely focused on your portfolio and your experience, and it reduces that interview duration to an hour-ish. The Chartered application's a beast. Unless you've got nothing else going on in your life, don't expect to sit down and bash that one out over a couple of days. It's going to take a lot of time, a lot of effort. I actually found it really useful approaching this as part of a focus group, because I had tried and gone away from it and come back to it, and gone away from it and come back to it a couple of times. By approaching it as a group, we got together, and I need to thank Shirley, she beat me to the punch, but we got together and had calls on a weekly basis to establish and keep the momentum. Starting off with the portfolio evidence, reviewing that and getting that to the right standard, and then working through each of the competency statements. You've got the 10 mandatory and 2 elective competencies from memory. I have to say that trying to get the evidence against each of those competence statements down to only 250 words is absolutely one of the biggest challenges with the application. I failed in my first attempt. We British are not particularly good at taking credit for things, so there's never any I in team. We are part of a whole. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. All of that. Newsflash: Chartership is about you. So make sure that you are really, really explicit about what you did. Now the guidance is all there, but you really need to make sure that you're covering off exactly what you did at each and every point. When you're answering those competency statements. The feedback that I got when I wasn't successful in the first application was really, really helpful. I knew exactly which elements of my application needed to be reviewed, and on the second submission I was successful and made it through. On reflection, I would say that particularly for Route 1, if your application's past this stage, then the interview is really about verifying the content and expanding on any points that are in there. The interview itself is fairly informal. The assessors are experienced professionals. They are there to make sure that you meet the standard as opposed to trying to trip you up in any way. But I would say that the interview itself, having done all of the hard work to get there, was a little bit more relaxed. There is no hiding, but if you've got to that point, it's because you know your stuff. Now I can talk about this stuff all day, but I'm conscious that we've still got Neil to hand over to, and probably some opportunity for Q&A. So I'll stop there for now and hand over to you, Neil.
Thanks for that, Greg. Sorry, so I think that was a really good overview and a really good kind of a view on that. Just for, I guess, for the benefit of the people that are connected into this session, I've spent the last 12 years on training and coaching people through these qualifications and the predecessors to them. So just a couple of things on the basis of the initial poll said that most of you were interested in CHPP, which Greg was just speaking about, and to a lesser extent PMQ and PPQ. So just a couple of words to the wise really about that before we just go into the Q&A. Is having worked with people over the last, as I said, I'm in year 12 now. So having worked with people over the last decade, taking people through the PMQ qualification and currently the PPQ and its predecessor, a few things just to be aware of. If you're going through those, as Greg has said about CHPP, don't underestimate the amount of time that you have to actually do to prepare for those. And for the PMQ in particular, so the PMQ is that kind of mid-level qualification that effectively validates your project management skills. So a few things just to be aware of. Could we, sorry, James, could you just flip us backwards to slide number 4 on the screen, just and build it up. So what I was going to say was just to be aware that if we're preparing for the PMQ and you have 10 questions you need to respond to in a 3-hour period, one of the things that lets people down on that is not actually answering the question that's in front of them. So quite often as a training provider, when we see the results back from this, what you'll actually find is someone has answered a question, but it's not the question that was on the paper. And if a question says to you, explain 3 benefits of having a formal risk management process in place, they're not expecting you to describe the risk management process. They're asking you for 3 clear benefits or advantages that you get from having that in place. And that's one of the common reasons why people don't as Greg said, didn't pass the exam first time round, go back and do it again. I'm not sure if that was the reason with you, Greg, but actually reading the questions, being clear about what it is that's being assessed, and then responding to those in the way that the question is actually being posed is one of the biggest things. So that was just as a, make sure that also you don't know which questions are going to come up. There's a syllabus for the PMQ that has over 60 assessment criteria that questions could be based on, and you're going to have to respond to 10 questions out of 16. So it's a subset of the entire syllabus, and you can't just focus your attention on a few specific areas of the exam syllabus that you're comfortable with. You have to have a broad exposure and a broad depth of knowledge around those topics as well. I think one of the other key things when James was talking about the PMQ qualification earlier was about this degree of understanding. And one thing that I've found from discussing the qualification with people who've actually candidates going through the development route for that is when you're working as a PM, and unlike Greg, I was an accidental PM, when you're working as a PM and you're having to explain to your team why you need them to do things in a particular way, having that degree of understanding of not just what the process is, but why it's important, what the implications are of not following it properly, etc. That's a really, really important thing that you get from doing the PMQ as well. So that was all really just around that. On the PPQ, as Greg said, it's a much higher level of knowledge that you actually need for that. But in terms of actually getting yourself ready to go through the assessment for that, as Greg said, 3-part assessment. You initially do a role play around the project, and you are given some challenges to resolve. And in that role play, you really need to be inside the head of that project. You have to think of yourself living and breathing that simulation project that you're being questioned on, because they're not asking you to role play and make things up. They're asking you to do things based on the actual specifics of what is in the simulated project that you're managing for that. In terms of the initial assessment piece that comes around that, so you get the assessment, then you get the oral exam, and then you get the project report to write up. So in terms of the scenario, you will always be challenged on your communication skills. So part of that simulation for the PPQ is how do you actually communicate effectively with your stakeholders. So you will always be tested on that, and then you will be tested on one of 3 other things: either how to negotiate effectively, how to solve problems, or how to make decisions. And what you'll get is communication is always tested, and one of those 3 other areas. So you really need to prepare, you really need to understand the case study project to the nth degree, as if it was the one thing that you were actually doing. So back to Greg's comment of take your time, prepare for it, make sure you put enough effort in to really understand and pick apart the case study of that project to ensure that that you understand it well enough for that oral assessment that you'll get as part of the PPQ as well. Okay, so that was all I just wanted to bring in. It was, again, just a few hints and tips really just around those particular qualifications. I'm currently working on my CHPP portfolio, so I haven't got there yet, like Greg and Shirley. So I can't comment on that, other than it is an awful lot of work to get to that point. So I would say at that point, James, are we okay just to pass over to doing the Q&A now?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So I think
Excellent.
This is just.
Thank you, James, and everyone. So questions. We've had a lot of great questions coming in. I think the first one from Mohammed is really good about can he potentially get a copy of the slides? Just to let you know that we're recording today's session. It'll be made available on APM YouTube tomorrow. There's handouts available as well. But yeah, we'll also make sure that the slides are there as well. So thank you for that question. There's been some quite great compliments coming in saying thank you for sharing your experiences and knowledge throughout today's event. So I'll now dive into the questions. So the first one would be from Sharon, who said, would there be more single subject qualifications provided by APM other than risk management in the future? I think that's for James.
So APM's always keen to develop those kinds of qualifications. It's all around kind of demand within the market. We haven't got any planned at the moment, but as I say, if there's demand for it within the market, we're absolutely happy to develop something along those lines, but nothing in the pipeline as of yet.
Yeah. Robert, can I just throw one thing in on that as well? There are a couple of single subject exams which are based on APM publications, but the exams are actually available through APMG, which are the people that do the prints. So there are separate earned value management and planning and control qualifications that are based on APM publications, but for whatever reason the exams aren't available directly through APM. They're available through the APMG G route as well.
Excellent. Thank you, James, and thanks for the additional information, Neil.
Okay.
Caroline has said, I'm in the process of completing a BSc Honours in Project Management degree apprenticeship. Would this qualify as route to chartered?
So the body that you're taking it through, be that your university or not, they should be able to give you the direct answer from that. Off the top of my head, I would say no, but double check with the institute that you're taking the university through. But I don't believe it does, unfortunately. I would double check that with your institute, though.
There are a list of the qualifications and the institutions that provide accredited qualifications which form Route 1 guidance, and that can be found in the chartered element of the APM website.
Yeah.
Thank you, James, and thank you, Greg. Alan's asked, Alan first shares that he works for an international organisation, and he wondered if there's any plans to align the APM qualifications with the IPMA so they are internationally recognised. If not, are APM looking to get their qualifications recognised internationally?
Absolutely, APM is looking to get its qualifications recognised internationally, and I know there's a lot of work being done internally to push that forward. That's kind of the information I know from our aspect, that yeah, we want to move into an international market, and there's definitely work that I've been doing around preparing kind of assessments and questions and things like that for those who possibly English isn't their first language, and kind of the different kind of English terminology, so kind of how English is in America, in Australia, and things like that, and sort of looking at idioms and things like that and colloquialisms. But yeah, absolutely a push forward to move into the international market.
Yeah, can I throw one other observation into that? Is that in terms of the IPMA, the International Project Management Association, APM actually offer level A, B, C, and D qualifications, and I know that because I was on the technical assurance group that signed them off with a bunch of other volunteers. So there are existing IPMA qualifications that are available through APM that you can do in the UK, and then those qualifications are recognised on an international basis already.
Rob, there was a comment on the key takeaways there asking about what level of qualification you would recommend for someone who's got 5 years experience in project management. I'm not sure whether or not that's coming from someone who is a member, a non-member, an associate, or what level the degree is, but actually full membership is another thing that's often overlooked when people are thinking about professional development. And actually the full membership application comes, the requisites, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, are 5 years experience in project management, so that may be one of the things that you'd want to look at. 3 years if you've got PMQ, but the application itself for full membership just simply requires you to evidence your experience in delivering against the 6 key tenets of project management. And I'm going to try and remember those off the top of my head here at the moment, but it's effectively management of scope, schedule, cost, risk, stakeholders, and someone help me out. In there, definitely 6. I'll come back to that.
Perfect. Thank you, Greg. I can see the time's ticking away, and there's been some great compliments coming in, and a lot of actual questions about pathways into different areas. So if you don't mind, James and Neil and Greg, I'll share those with you, and we'll make contact with everyone. Yep. Obviously, sorry, I'm conscious of time. But But really, it does just leave me to say thank you to Greg, James, Neil, Shirley and Adam in the background for giving up your time today for today's event, sharing your knowledge and experiences. Oh, there's some, Douglas has said, thank you very much indeed. Ashok has said, nice presentation. Thank you all, APM. You can see some great compliments coming through. So thank you to you all for your time.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, James.
Excellent.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Okay, bye.
Bye. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. As I say, there's some additional information in the handouts. Please take that away with you. Equally, have a look on the APM website. We're going to send out an email in the next 24 hours with a link to this recording and some additional information. I'll also include my email address, so feel free to make contact with us and I can introduce you to James to get additional information. Keep an eye out on the APM events page. There's a whole host of events coming up, both face-to-face and virtual, and we hope to see you there soon. Most importantly, keep well and we'll see you soon.